things up, setting up their program, practicing, teaching the children. At each of the events, the children prayed, they recited scripture, they sang joyfully, they had skits or dancing, and I just hate you can't see that because you had a little bit of everything in that one. But the teachers did a fantastic job of using the ministry partner guide, and it was so precious to see the children listening carefully and responding and answering to the teacher's questions. But at the different distributions, we were seated up at the front, and the children were along the sides, boys on one side, girls on the other. They were seated front to back, youngest to oldest. And at the front, where we were seated most of the time, the shoeboxes were already there. They were pretty much separated, but they were covered with fabric. And they went through their programs, just like I mentioned before, with the prayer, with the scripture, with the singing and dancing. And then the teacher took over, and she did use the ministry partner guide and held it up. And then she had her assistant that held up the posters for each section and went through the whole presentation. It was very interactive. She was working with the children back and forth, asking questions for them, and they would raise their hand or stand up and answer. And they did a great job with that. And then when she finished and they had the prayer for those to raise their hand who was interested in hearing more about the gospel message, hearing more opportunity to have a relationship with Jesus, they would raise their hand. And then we went to the part where we started handing out shoeboxes, and we would pass those out, and then they would do the countdown like you've seen in all the videos, the 3, 2, 1, 0, and then you got all kind of reactions, anywhere from reserved, they're holding on to their box and didn't want to open it, from looking at the others to, screaming and jumping, the whole 9 yards. But that was a similarity in all of them. And then after that, we had chime with the children, and we're loving on them. But I wanted to share with you about something that happened on our first day. First day out, we went to distribution for first graders. The National Leadership Team had already distributed to the older children in this primary school the year before, and so we were there. They were precious. They were lined up. They sat there like judges, and were so still and so respectful, no wiggling, the whole thing. And it was just a terrific distribution. And then after we had presented the gift to the from Operation Christmas Child to the pastor of the church, we loaded up on the bus and then drove literally almost around the corner to what was a cultural presentation. And we were like, okay, we didn't really know what to expect. When we got there, there was a grove of trees around, out in the dirt, hard-packed dirt, so you could tell they had met there before. We lined up in chairs across the front, and our translators were behind us, and all around, the older children were just pouring in. So we were pretty much circled with children. There were children in the trees. In front of us, there was drummers, like 4 drummers up there, and they had really cool Nito drums. One of my children played the drums, so I was really gravitating towards that. And behind them, there were ladies that were chanting, so, we're sitting there. We really had not had a lot of explanation about this. We didn't realize if this was a presentation maybe by the older children that were doing something, or, we were just kind of sitting there. And so dancers came out in the middle of the circle, and we're watching them, and they're energetically dancing on this hard-packed ground, and kicking up dirt and moving around. And they had these costumes that were made from strips of rags, from feathers, just from whatever they could find. And we were watching this, and the drums were playing, the women chanting, and it got louder, and it kind of got darker, kind of almost ominous sounding. We watched as different dancers came through. One was very good at mimicking a chicken. He, did the elbow thing, did the chicken neck thing, and then there was one that came out and looked like a gentleman was leading a monkey or some kind of ape or something. He was doing the thing with his hands. It looked like he was walking on it, and then there were several other sets of dancers, some of them in dark costumes, and it just the whole time we were kind of we didn't know whether to clap. We didn't know what to do. It was just, there was something ominous. And if you could see my arms right now, the hair is standing up on my arms because it just, it was oppressive. It was heavy feeling when you were there. And, we're trying to take cues from our translators behind us, and they're looking down at the ground. There were children that were hiding their faces in their mother's skirts. It was really odd, just really creepy feeling. And so we get back on the bus. Well, before that, the chief comes out, and he said that he was honored, to have us there, and that he wanted to explain, their beliefs. And honestly, by that point, I was so confused that I really didn't get what else he said. But so we went and got back on the bus. And the translators explained that what this was this was kind of an occult that was surrounding them. It was what their local church fought against, and it was they worshipped spirits of the dead. They worshipped dead chickens, dead apes, monkeys, dead people. And what they do is they actively pursue the children when they're of age. I heard anywhere from 4 years old to 8 or 9 years old, and they chase these children down and make them answer the question that identifies them as a cult member. If they can't, they beat them. And so these children were scared. That's why the ones that were timid, hiding their faces, they're scared of them. But and so it made sense what we saw a little bit more when we were watching this program. But what I want to share with you is that the church there is their only hope. We went to another distribution that the church was surrounded by Muslims all around, and the church was the bright light in the community. And instead of kind of being creeped out about that particular presentation, what we took away after we had a good discussion back on the bus, what our takeaway is the Lord had put an example right in front of us, that it was a very, very clear demonstration of the evil all around them. It was what that local church, what that pastor, what those teachers are fighting against. They are saving those children from worshiping a dead chicken, worshiping dead relatives or whatever it was. And here in the United States, we gloss over sin so much. It surrounds us just as much too. But the enemy is so smart. He's covered it, and he's cushioned the sin all around us. And the ministry partner materials and the teacher did such a good job of teaching the children over and over that sin enters through our mind. It enters through what we say, what we do, and that it surrounds us all of the time, and we have to be vigilant about it. And what I would love for you to remember as you're in the middle of your paperwork and your busyness and your spreadsheets and your team members that need extra grace, is what I would love for you to remember, that we are in a battle, and that I've got the song stuck in my head, the God of angel armies, he goes before us, he stands behind us, and that what you are doing matters. What you are doing is saving lives. And so I am thankful, and I am grateful that this was just a concrete reminder right in front of us. We had just events that were just precious and just so, never forget them. But this is what I wanted to share with you, because this is what you would not have seen from watching the videos or knowing. But so that's my strong reminder for you. And then I have scripture to pray over you before I'm done. And I've lost my timer, but 2 Corinthians 10:3-5. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That is awesome. And I know that any of us that went, if y'all want more, even more details, any of us would be happy to share. But that really was a very powerful moment, and thank you for that, Kathy. Well, I wonder if some of you ever wonder, why do we do these calls? What is really the purpose of these calls? And while there's many purposes for this call, one of the main purposes is to equip you and to help you grow as leaders. And I know for each of us that are in leadership, we have a desire to grow and to continue to be better and better at leading and building our teams. And so last month we talked about delegation, and I know that at least for me, oftentimes there's things that I learn that might impact me in the moment, but if I don't pretty immediately implement them, then I can easily, forget, and it doesn't really have any real impact in my life. And just a quick reminder, if you are on the call, go ahead and hit your mute button. I'm hearing just a little bit of feedback. So if you will, mute your phone or your computer. Excellent. So we really want the things that we share with you to be able to implement very easily and readily. So one of the things that we did last month, you probably noticed in the AC newsletter, was we added some questions that you can ask yourself about the delegation call that Tracy did last month. And even for all of us that are staff that are working with you all, we're talking about these things on our coaching calls as well. And we really want to do that, kind of ask you questions and press you a little bit about what did you learn and how can you implement it so that it can become more part of you and really end up impacting your leadership. So today we've got Roxy Hill, who's going to share with us. She had an example of the first question that we asked on the AC newsletter, which was, what is something that you needed to cast vision to delegate, and how did you cast vision for it? And so, Roxy, I'm going to let you share with us about that.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. I have a couple instances. We did Leadership Live on April 4 for our team in Alabama, down in Birmingham. So I asked our MCs if they would prepare the team agenda and facilitate the recruitment module. We're trying to build our team up. So they did very well. They weren't perfect, but they all stepped in and they all did what they were asked to do, and it was a great meeting. So that was on May the 5th, and then also I've asked our church relations coordinator to facilitate how to host a project leader workshop. We're a little bit behind. We should be doing those right now, but she has agreed to do that. We're meeting on the 19th to do a walkthrough, and then on the 23rd of June, she's going to be presenting to our church relations, our community relations. We're doing it as a full team event. And so far we have 2 drop-off team leaders who have agreed they want to come and participate, and they want to assist during the project leader workshops. We're also going to be holding those at some of the drop-off locations. So we're really unifying our team. But the delegation part that I wanted to speak to was having people serving, feeling that they are part of the team, feeling that they're not lockstepped into just being a church relations team member or coordinator, but it's a full event. So these ladies have all stepped up. I've got all female coordinators, and they've all stepped up, and they're all doing a good job and took it off my plate, which is a good plan for me. I just kind of watch them, wind them up, and let them go. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, Roxy. Very Forrest Gump of you. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Roxy. And I do hope that each of you, we know that the information that we present on these calls, that everybody's not going to take everything from it, but we do hope that there's at least one thing that you can take from each of these calls and make immediately implementable in your life. So I'm going to go back to presenting my desktop, and so hopefully this will end up showing up here in just a second for you.
Shelley, this is Joaquin. Can I have a quick question for Roxy?
Sure, you go right ahead, Joaquin.
It's not related to delegation for sure, but I'm curious, your project leader, the how to host a project leader workshop, is that face-to-face or are you going to do a conference call for that?
No, it'll be a team meeting face to face. They'll be coming to my house. We'll be doing a lunch. We'll be showing the PowerPoint slide, and we'll have prepared handout materials and just walk through together.
Okay.
At
No.
that
Okay.
time, they'll also be scheduling.
No. The reason I asked, had it been a conference call, I may have had my church relations folks dialed in, but if it's going to be face-to-face, that doesn't work.
Yes, it's much better that way, I think. They can ask questions and look at the materials together. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, and good thinking, Joaquin. I mean, anytime that we can share and piggyback on what others are doing, that just multiplies our time, right? So good question. All right. Well, so can everybody see my PowerPoint at this point on the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Thanks, Roxy. All right. So one of the things that we really wanted to talk about today was time management. And I'm sure I don't need to explain to any of you why this is a topic we wanted to cover. I think all of us struggle in this area. We have a ministry where there's no lack of things to do. And I think all of us struggle with it on every level. I was talking to Nina last month on our coaching call, and this was something that she brought up. And we talked about, some ways that we could improve this for her. I talked to Tracy, I think it was yesterday morning, and she was saying, I'm just trying to figure out what to do first. I've got this huge list of priorities and just trying to figure out what's the most important. And, so all of us struggle with this. And so it's a worthy topic. And this picture that I have on here, this was a little girl that we encountered in Malawi, and she was just cute as can be. And one of the things that impacted me greatly in Malawi was on one of our evenings, Jean, who's the national coordinator for Malawi, and so her role is a direct correlation of yours. She manages Malawi, just like you manage your area teams. But she stood up and she shared the goals and kind of did a presentation on what the ministry looks like in Malawi. And she had a slide that showed their goals and kind of their, what they were hoping to accomplish. And it was a 5-year chart. And so it showed from last year, she showed shoebox numbers and outreach events and teachers trained and, all the stats that they keep track of. And then she had this year's, and the numbers were all lower for this year than they were for last year. And then she showed 2019 and 2020, and of course those were projected to be higher because they're wanting to grow. And it just struck me, I guess I'm just a visual person, as I was looking at that slide, and it just really hit me, their numbers are lower for this year because our numbers were lower for this year. We had a hit, we didn't make our goals, they can't make their goals. And it just really convicted me about my time. And that, because we didn't collect as many shoeboxes as we had wanted to, and there's various reasons for that, this directly impacts them and they're not able to reach as many children as they would like to reach. And so the truth is, when we don't do things that will make the most impact, when we're not choosing wisely with our time, then we decrease our national leadership team's abilities to share the gospel. And that's just the bottom line for us. So this is hugely important. And while I don't think our lack of time management was the direct reason why we didn't meet our goals last year, it matters. It contributes. And when we're having struggles with time management, if we're not improving, then we are having an impact on the ministry. So my hope with this call is that I can share something today that can just help you increase your time management skills and improve your time management just a bit. So one of the things I've mentioned, I think, to y'all as a group is that I've enjoyed listening to Craig Groeschel and some of his leadership podcasts. I don't listen to his church things as much, but I really enjoy his leadership information. And one of the things that he talked about, I listened to a podcast called It's About Time, and I put the link at the end of this PowerPoint if you want to look at it yourself or listen to it yourself. But he talks about scheduling your values. And so this implies first of all, that you know what your values are, that you know what's most important, that you know what you can do with your time to make the most impact on this ministry. And so it's really important that we're all very clear on that. We need to be clear about what our values are, because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, our problem isn't about time. Our problem oftentimes is about desire. If we want to do something badly enough, or we place enough value on it, then we're going to do those things. So we need to be really clear on what our values are. And one of the examples he gives is he talks about, one of his values is to be a really good father and husband. And so he talks about how he has to schedule time, decide how is he going to become a great husband and father, and then he schedules time accordingly, because he's not going to just become a great father or husband by osmosis. If he's not investing the time into it, then he's not going to become a great husband and father. And likewise for us, if we're not investing time in the things that are going to make impact in our ministry, then we're not going to improve our impact in the ministry. So I think the good news for us is that we really have, I think to a large extent, defined our values. We know what things in this ministry, what things we can do to impact the ministry. And on a large scale, those are called our dashboard markers, which we're all familiar with. But on a smaller scale, a more regional scale, one of the tools that we have to kind of help us define what our values are our regional initiatives. And can anybody, and you'd have to take yourself off mute if you want to answer this question, but can anybody tell me what is our key regional initiative for this year?
Equipped and effective team members.
What was that, Kathy?
Equipped and effective team members. That's not quite the wording, but that's the idea.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Every team member equipped and engaged and effective. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of in a little bit more of a funnel than that, we've really decided to focus all of our time and energy as staff, and we're encouraging you to focus your time and energy on leadership development, because we believe that focusing on leadership development and adding leaders to our team, selecting strong leaders, and then equipping those leaders to do their role well is really what's going to get us to that point where we have every team member engaged and effective. Because without those leaders, it's going to be difficult for us to do that. So our key regional initiative is leadership development. And y'all probably have seen that in what we've been doing as staff. If you recall our AC planning meeting, we spent a whole lot of time focusing on leadership development. We were getting you equipped and ready to present Leadership Live. We spent a lot of time at Leadership Live. We spent a lot of time at logistics coordinator trainings. And then all of our AC calls have been geared towards leadership development, delegation, and now time management, things that can help you grow as a leader. So that value is pretty clearly defined. We want to develop our leaders. The second thing that we have that's a great tool for us is our ministry plan. So we all spent hours and hours and lots of time and sweat and energy went into these ministry plans, right? And this is why, because we want to be able to put our values very clearly on paper. It gave you the opportunity to take your values, put them on a document that you can refer to every single month. And that ministry plan helps you schedule your time and make sure that you're dedicating time to your values. So that ministry plan is a huge tool. And then finally, the AC newsletter is another tool that you can use. And the way, y'all probably have noticed this, but the way we design that newsletter, at the very top, the very first thing you see are the deadlines that we have, which we believe are going to help us achieve our goals, and then the key areas of focus for that month. And so your ministry plan and your AC newsletter are kind of your best friend in figuring out how you can schedule your values. So how do we make sure that we are scheduling our values? How do we do that well? So one of the keys to that is being proactive, not reactive. And I think you know what I mean by this, but I feel like too often the truth is we react to the demands on our time rather than sifting the demands on our time through our values. And so I'm going to say that one more time. We react to the demands on our time rather than sifting the demands that come our way through our values. So I'll just give a very recent example. Obviously, this morning I was doing some work on this call. I needed to put some things together, and just having the switch from me to Nina, I just had some things I needed to do. But at the same time, I had all kinds of emails coming in, different people calling me, texting me, people coming into my office. There were still things happening here. But I needed to get, this was the top priority for me. I needed to get this figured out. And so, it could be easy for me to, if somebody's coming in and standing in my office, I react to that, right? I think, oh man, I have to take care of this. Or if somebody's on the phone, oh, that's urgent, that's important, it's in front of me, I need to take care of it. So I really had to do a lot of quick thinking about my values this morning and figure out, okay, somebody's in my office, how can I deal with them quickly and keep on the main thing? So that happens to all of us. Kids get sick, work blows up, we get sick. Something stands in the way between us and what we had really intended and wanted and needed to do. And so we're constantly and every minute kind of sifting through the demands on our time. So I wanted to show y'all again this little chart. It's from the Leadership Development Time Management course that all of you are familiar with. But I think it's really good just to look at it again and kind of have a refresher, because I think one of the keys for us in time management is really thinking through very quickly as things come our way, demands on our time come our way. I think we very quickly need to assign categories to it and kind of know, okay, where does this fit in the scheme of things? So just a refresher on this, you've got your urgent demands, your not urgent demands, and then you can see on the side the important demands and the not important demands. And so really what our key is with this chart is we're trying to stay out of quadrant 4 altogether. So anything that comes our way that's not important and not urgent, hopefully none of us are camping out here. But I'll tell you where I end up camping out here. I kind of consider this quadrant the distractions. So, I can be working on email, focusing on work, and then all of a sudden somebody sends me something and there's a link attached. It's a video or something that interests me, but it doesn't directly relate to anything that I'm currently working on. And the next thing you know, I'm thinking, oh, I'm just going to watch this real quick, and here I'm sidetracked. So that was something that was not urgent, not important, but whoops, all of a sudden I'm spending some time there. So that's kind of a category that we have to watch out for and really limit our distractions. But I don't think that's our main problem. I don't think most of us are camping out here. I think really for most of us, the problem is, or the challenge is really focusing here on quadrant number 2. Because the things over here in this first column that are urgent, whether they're important or not, we're going to gravitate toward those things. We're going to want to deal with them quickly. They're in our face. They've come to us, and either somebody's in front of us or somebody is putting their agenda on us. They come to us, and something that's very important to them all of a sudden is very important to us. And so we've got to be very protective of our time in those situations. And we've really got to think about, okay, how can I focus on these things that are important but aren't necessarily urgent? And that would be things like, for instance, your own leadership development. That's important. It's very important, but it's not urgent. Nobody on your team is going to be like, oh man, Joaquin, did you not finish that lesson on time management? Probably not, but it's still important. And so what I'm going to show you next is maybe a very practical way that we can make sure that we take care of quadrant 2 and limit quadrant 1 and definitely quadrant 3, and kind of focus up here on the important things. So just a quick note, as I mentioned leadership development for ourselves, just a quick side note here. When we talk about leadership development, it's not just us developing our teams, our coordinators and our team members. This is really about developing ourselves. Like as staff, we want to make sure that we're scheduling time for our own leadership development, and we want to encourage you to schedule time for your own leadership development. We're hoping that all of you are investing time and scheduling time and growing in those areas of challenge for you. And as your regional points of contact, as we have our coaching conversations with you, you probably hear us say a lot or instruct a lot or maybe give some practical exercises for you. And I just want to put a plug in for the fact that those are never busy work. We never want to give you busy work kinds of things to do. But oftentimes, as somebody kind of outside of what you're doing, we can see that different things might be able to help you become more effective. I know that, with Nina, I had made a suggestion to her about maybe how she could work to manage her time. And I think she took that to heart, and she's working on that. I know that Tricia has been talking with her coordinators a good bit about recruitment, and she's been assigning them some activities about cultivating a really great recruitment message. I know Jody's been working with her teams on time management. So there's different ways that each of us are working with you as individuals, and I just encourage you to take advantage of that and make sure that you're scheduling time that's not time wasted. But that's one of those things that's important, but it's not urgent, so it can easily get thrown to the side. So just be sure that you're aware of that and making sure that you are scheduling time there. All right, so real quickly, some practical things that I think can help us stay in the quadrants that we need to be in, so to speak. So the one thing I would say that you must do each month if you want to be an effective time manager is you have got to make sure that you have scheduled time to schedule your time, if that makes sense. So I don't know how y'all do it. Just a practical thing I think would be towards the end of every month. Hopefully all of you are scheduling maybe an hour at the end of your month to plan for your next month, or maybe even the next 2 months, however you like to do it. But you've got to be planning for that month. You've got to be scheduling your time in advance, or else those urgent things are going to come your way and you're going to be floundering and trying to figure out what to do. So if you haven't established that habit, that's the first thing I would suggest that you do is set that appointment to make out your schedule. And during that hour, a couple things that you'd be doing: reviewing your ministry plan, looking at the AC newsletter, using those tools that are good reminders of what your values are. And then those will inform your month. Those are going to inform what you're going to be working on that month. So that's kind of the first tip. Schedule an hour to review the ministry plan and AC newsletter and review your goals, deadlines, and your priority activities. Then once you've done that, then you're going to be asking yourself 2 questions. One, what do you have to accomplish for the month? These are things that are deadline driven or event driven, things that you have to accomplish. And then what do you want to accomplish for the month? And it's very important to distinguish between these 2 things, because that's going to be able to help you if you get in a pinch and you find yourself losing time or you're not accomplishing everything. Then you'll be able to make really quick decisions. You'll be able to look at your calendar and very easily be able to move things around because you've already coded them either have to do or want to do. So the things that you want to do, you can say, okay, I'm going to have to move that till next week or next month. But the things that you have to do, you have to find a way to get those done. And I think that's very helpful. Then, of course, you're looking at your month and you're looking at each day and you're seeing how many hours do I have each day. And usually by the end of the month, for the next month, what are the things that are already scheduled? How much time will I have? And hopefully each of you are committing to at least 5 hours a week. Although I know most of you put in a lot more than that. But that's kind of the minimum. So maybe you start there and you schedule in your 5 hours and then you go up from there as you have more time. But kind of figure out how many hours you have each day. And then from there, you're able to schedule your hours and activities for each day. So you're able to look at each day and say, okay, I've got 2 hours today. Here's what I want to do. I've got 30 minutes this day. Here's what I'm going to do. And then from there, once you kind of have things on your calendar for each day, then you highlight the things that have to be done. And that kind of helps you as you get towards the end of the day and you haven't accomplished something that had to be done, then you need to find time for it, or you move something that doesn't have to be done. And then the last kind of good check and balance is to look at your calendar once you have it set and just say, okay, is 80% of my time focused on leadership development? Can I say that 80% of the time here I'm either recruiting, equipping, leading in some way? Is this how you're spending your time? And that's kind of a good check and balance. All right, so just real quickly, I'll breeze through this, but certainly y'all can ask questions about it once I'm done. This was something that Nina and I kind of talked about, and I fleshed it out here on paper, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. So we're going to take Nina, for example. These are some of the things that she's working on. So you see here in the left-hand column, I've got Nina's May to-do list. These are the things that she wanted to do. And you can see that I've highlighted in yellow all the things that had to be done. Like these are deadline-driven or priority-driven things. So it's a little scary because just about all of it is in yellow. But we do have one thing here that doesn't have to be done. So that's something that as she's working on her month and she's seeing how her time is actually fleshing out, then she can easily take that off. That's something she could just move off or move to the next month or whatever. So it kind of helps to have it already listed out like this. Then what she's going to do, she's going to take week 1 of May, and she says she's got 10 hours that she can do. And she divides it out by day. And you don't have to do it this way. You can do it by week or by month or whatever, but I think if the more specific you can be, the more helpful it is. So then you've got 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, listing out the tasks. And again, the highlighted ones are the things that have to happen. The non-highlighted are things that you could say, okay, if this prep call for the AC takes longer than an hour, maybe it takes 2 hours, then we'll just move the calls for prospective drop-off locations. It can move to another day or another week because it wasn't really a top priority. Or time sensitive maybe is the other. And so this just kind of helps you manage and prioritize and consistently be very quick to see what opportunities you need to focus on and what you can let go of. And as you go through your week, like at the end of this week, if Nina still has 3 things in yellow here and it's Friday and she hasn't accomplished them, then she needs to go back to her to-do list and she needs to see, okay, which of these can I adapt? Which of these can I accomplish maybe another way? Which of them can I delegate? Which of them can I maybe lessen my expectations on? So it just kind of helps you figure all of that out. So I hope that that's helpful. I would love to just open it up for a minute to see if anybody has any questions or comments or challenges, with this or time management. Just remember to unmute yourself if you do. All right, well, I'm going to give time at the end for questions if you think of something, but I would just suggest, whether this information was hugely helpful to you or not, hopefully there was something that you can take from this. And I think maybe one thing to consider would be if you aren't doing this, if you aren't sitting down and scheduling your time this way, to really try it for June. You have the AC newsletter, you've got your ministry plan, the month is ahead of us. And try it. Maybe just try it for a week and see how it works for you and see how you can maybe adapt it. If it doesn't quite work, adapt it to where it can fit you. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do, I really wanted to have some regional highlights. And Kathy Driver, we shared, I believe, her agenda for her evaluation and equipping meeting with you all because it was just a really good, solid agenda. And so she's going to share some of the highlights or challenges that she had with her recent equipping meeting.
I unmuted myself. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So our equipping meeting was at the upstairs room of a coffee shop. There were 5 of us. I have 4 church relations team members that attended, plus myself. The agenda was helpful. I used the PowerPoint that Tricia had put together, but unfortunately I couldn't project it anywhere, so I had printed out the agenda or the slides just like our listening guide today. The problem, well, it had a good outcome. It didn't kind of go the way I thought. To start with, we ate lunch first, and of course we chatted too long at lunch, so we started the meeting late. And then, I went down some of the agenda things, and as we're about getting to the good part about warm leads, the couple Dawn and Randy, they informed me they have to leave at a certain time to go pick up their grandson. So we did spend time talking about warm leads, and I had them take a couple minutes to write down, people they knew who maybe they could approach for different churches. And I took time to show them on the computer about how to research a church like Tricia suggested, and how to figure out key messages for the church. So I didn't have time for everybody to go do that, because at this point, Dawn and Randy are about ready to leave. So I shared the shoebox goals for our team, and I made sure to give them words of encouragement at the end. And then after Dawn and Randy left, I worked individually with the two people that were left. So the whole time I'm doing the meeting, I'm feeling very mixed up and rushed and so forth. I wasn't sure really that it helped equip anybody. But that afternoon, I got this email from Dawn and Randy, and they were, for some reason, they were so inspired. And they've gone off right after the next couple weeks after the meeting. They went off and talked to 6 or 7 new churches. So I guess what I learned from this experience is that you can't tell what God's going to do with your time together. So it doesn't have to feel good to you for him to work.
Awesome. I love that, Kathy. That's great. And I think it's great, too, that you were well prepared, because then you were able to kind of shift as things came your way that you weren't prepared for. At least you kind of knew, what to highlight. And I'm really thankful that the Lord allowed you to see some fruit from it.
Yes, me too.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Nina, you are up next. We are going to move into talking just briefly about onboarding, because I know, we're focusing a lot on recruitment, and some of you have brought on some really great ministry coordinators. And so we just wanted to take a couple of minutes to refresh on equipping. And so Nina is going to do her best to share her vision for the importance of this.
All right. I hope y'all can hear me. We got our feedback from Leadership Live, and it showed that none of us were able to complete the equipping section. And so I just wanted to share, as we focus on recruitment this year, I just think, we need to know what to do with these recruits once we get them, after they sign their ministry description. And I was just thinking back about in my final years of education, I was privileged to mentor first and second year teachers. And we found that when the baby teachers were mentored and they felt that somebody was really investing in their efforts, they blossomed and they did a great job. Even now, I continue to track those teachers that the principal and I invested in. And though they're not all at the same school, they're still teaching. Or they've chosen to become principals. And the same idea works in ministry. Our leadership development program shows us how to invest in our ministry coordinators and team members. And one of the things that I wanted to call your attention to, I'm sure you've noticed that when you get that email from our admins notifying us that a new team member has been sent the credentials from IOCC, you've been given a guide about what to do next. The onboarding process is necessary, and I appreciate the very specific instructions that our admin team includes for us when they send us that email. So, Shelley, will you go into detail about that a little bit?
Yes, I sure will. And thank you, Nina. I thought I could hear you well, and thank you for making the effort to speak. That was good. I really wanted y'all to hear Nina's heart about that, because as a teacher, I think she does just have a real heart for it. And as an AC, really wants her teams to grow and develop well. So I just wanted to we thought it would be a good idea just to go over some of the basics of the onboarding and just refresh a little bit on this and maybe highlight some of the importances of it. So I'm going to present my desktop again here. Hopefully this will show up for you in just a second. So like Nina mentioned, we have a email that we send out that has really good instructions and a couple of highlights for that in terms of onboarding once you bring on a new ministry coordinator. And again, let me have a sidebar here. I think that sometimes this development of our ministry coordinators can fall into that important, not urgent category, because there's a lot of things that we can do the bare minimum with our ministry coordinators. They can go on themselves and watch MST. They can go on themselves and do LDP. We've designed our training program to be pretty well self-driven and self-explanatory so that we aren't having to do a whole lot of training, so to speak. And so we really can, as leaders, delegate that to the online programs. And it's not urgent, some of the things that we would need to do to help make sure they're demonstrating a competency, right? That's more of that important but not urgent thing. So that's why this is kind of connecting, is that we've got to be sure as leaders that we're scheduling this time to have these coaching calls, to massage in, so to speak, the concepts that they're learning online. So in that email, the first thing that we're instructing to do is to have that initial meeting. We've got the guide that you have, which is great. You can talk through that, but this is really a great time for you to bond with your new ministry coordinator, to share your vision, to hear their heart. Probably this is the first conversation you will have had with them since your interview. And so it's just a really great, sweet relationship building time. So that's going to be your first step. And then right after that, they're going to start doing their online training. They're going to more than likely start doing MST, because leadership development takes a couple of weeks for them to get enrolled. And so this is awesome, because then you can set them right on course to doing church relations or prayer or whatever their specialty is. They start doing their MST. And then you're able to follow up with them with the coaching guide. And that coaching guide is great. It's got questions, exercises, things that enable you to really see, okay, what are they getting and what might I need to fill in with? So then within 3 weeks, they should be ready to go, or at least have a good understanding of their role, their ministry role. And then finally, we just want to make sure that we are diligent to set up that coaching meeting with each team member. And we definitely want to do monthly, but with a new coordinator, you may decide maybe we want to do weekly for a couple of months, or maybe every other week, just to touch base and keep them encouraged and keep them moving forward. Because I don't know about you, but if somebody sticks me in a room and I'm just watching online learning and nobody's interacting with me, yikes. I mean, I'm not going to do very well. I need to bounce things off of somebody. So that's really the importance of this process. And then once you complete that, one of the tools that we have that you may or may not be really familiar with, we have some equipping guides that we had designed a couple of years ago. And to me, they're just a great complement to what you're doing with the MST and the coaching guides that are there. This is just a little snippet of one page of the equipping guide, but these are located on the AC folder on Box under the title. It's a folder that says equipping guides. But it just kind of goes into a little bit more detail, like here are some of the activities you'll want to make sure that your coordinators are exposed to. We want to make sure that they have been introduced to MyOCC, that you've had time to go through that with them and they're aware of what's on there. We want to make sure that they're part of team meetings. We want to make sure that they're developing a recruitment message. We want to make sure that we've given them the resources, their drop-off logs and other prospect lists that they might need. So this equipping guide is just kind of a check and balance that gives you a little bit more information. It should be used in partnership with the coaching guides from MST so that you can talk them through and kind of make sure that you're giving them all the resources and knowledge that they need to really excel in their role. And then, of course, with LDP, just a side note, with leadership development, you've got all of you have been through leadership development, so you have access to the essential exercises that they're asked to do and the questions they're asked to fill out. And so that should always be part of your coaching call with them each month, is following up on LDP. What did you learn? How are you implementing what you learned? What questions do you have? Really kind of working with them side by side on implementing those concepts that they've been learning. All right. So last thing we wanted to focus on is one last regional highlight. One of my personal, loves is the day of prayer and fasting. I just really am excited about the possibilities that we have with this day of prayer and fasting. And so Kathy Aiken, I was talking to her recently, and she had a prayer team member who took initiative. And so Kathy's going to share with us kind of what happened on the day of prayer and fasting with her prayer team. Kathy?
Shelley, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, my camera's not working, so sorry about that. This QDPF was something that has been on my heart. I lost our prayer coordinator this year, and I have 2 prayer team members, and I just challenged them both to think about something they could do for the quarterly day of prayer and fasting. And I stressed to them, I don't care how small it is. I roomed with one of my prayer team members at Connect, and so she and I spoke about this several times, I just had to keep telling her, look, Kay, if it's you and me at your church praying, it's a win. That way it took the pressure off of her to come up with something big and fancy. And I knew that if I could just get her to do it once, that we would get this off the ground. Well, she did it all right. She took it and ran with it. She, upon her own initiative, I thought it would be a success just to do something very simple. Well, she made up an agenda that she got to me a few days ahead of time. She is a church secretary, and so she invited her prayer network partners to the meeting, and she put it out to her church wide. But we had 8 people that showed up, plus she and I, so for a total of 10. She got the agenda out to everybody, and actually, I wouldn't have thought of this, but she assigned people specific things to pray about. Either they had been asked to pray about through the region, or they were specific prayer requests on our team. So, and then she assigned people. I was assigned to pray for the engagement campaign. Kay prayed for project leader workshops we had upcoming. Kay also prayed for new drop-off locations. And then this is the part I loved that she did. She said ahead of time to me, would you mind just speaking to the group for just a couple of minutes about what it is we want to be praying for? And that gave me a chance to really educate these prayer network partners about just the next step in the ministry and what's going on in our national leadership teams in other countries as we prayed for them. And as it was all over, they came back and said, wow, we really know how to pray now. Thank you so much for that time. And it was just a sweet way for me to get to know them better as well. And my prayer team member, she is motivated and excited about doing this time. So I would say it was a big, huge win for us. And I got to put a check mark in an events column that really didn't take much effort.
I love it. Thank you, Kathy. I'm so encouraged by that story. And that's really our hope for the day in prayer and fasting, that each of you will find a way, it can be unique and your own individual way of incorporating the day of prayer and fasting. All right, well, just a quick review, and then we'll open it up for questions. So y'all be thinking while I'm reviewing. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to hear more about anything that's been shared, we'll have just a few minutes for that. But just kind of to recap, when it comes to time management, our key initiative is leadership development. Be sure that you're scheduling your values. 80% of your time should be spent on your goals for the year. Set a time to make time. Make out your calendar for the next month. Make sure that that's something that you calendar is planning your time for the next month. And then finally, evaluate your tasks. Be sure that you're clear about what must be done, what can move to the next month or next week, and then what can be delegated. Having those categories already established can be very helpful. And then on onboarding and equipping, use the resources that we've developed. They're really good. The initial meeting guide, the coaching calls, the LDP exercises. Follow the timeline. Try to stay as close as you can to getting this done really quickly so that people can get onboarded and moving forward without delay. And then finally, prioritize time with your coordinators. This should always be one of your top priorities for your month, is spending time with them, doing exercises with them, making sure they're getting it and becoming proficient at the things that they're working on. All right, so any questions or comments? We covered a variety of topics, so anything y'all have questions or comments on?
Hey, Shelley, this is Joaquin with a question in the equipping and onboarding category. We are very close to getting a new drop-off team leader invited into the team. So from a logistics standpoint, other than the DOTL guide, are there tools similar to the ones that exist, say, for church relations and community or prayer mobilization, et cetera?
Yes, that's a great question, and it cracked me up. You sounded kind of like Jeopardy! I'll take onboarding and equipping for for 50. But yes, no, we do not currently have like the coaching guide or the initial meeting guide or things like that. So really with logistics, what we're doing currently is continuing to use the manual that's online, the online manual, and then just kind of supplement. What I like to do with drop-off team leaders is meet with them individually, and because the drop-off team leader role is so hands-on, you're filling out paperwork and you're showing how to cartonize and you're showing how to set things up. Like, I think those are best done in person, and just kind of going back through some of the highlights of the manual and really physically being there to show them what to do. I know for us as staff, we've kind of developed a little agenda that we use when we're training a drop-off team leader that we would be happy to share with you, that just kind of hits kind of the highlights that we hit, picking things out of the manual that we feel like are the most important. So I can put that on the AC folder, and I'll send out an email in the recap. But I'd love to hear too, does anybody else have any suggestions or ideas on how you're educating your drop-off team leaders?
Shelley, there's those training videos from last year. There were those short training video clips that were really good that we used last year.
Yes, the ones like how to cartonize and how to fill out a BOL, and yeah, and those now they actually incorporated it into the manual. So if you're reading through the manual online, those little videos actually pop up as you're going through. So yeah, those are great. That's a great point, Nina. Those are a great tool.
Can I say, I was playing around with the downloadable resources, and one of those resources had links to those videos, so that was exciting, but they were not running. They were not, I was going to the link, you would see the initial screenshot, hit the little triangle or whatever, and it wouldn't run. So I don't know if that's feedback for our technical folks. But I tried to run them this morning, and I was not able to run or play them anyways.
Okay, well, I've made note of that, Joaquin, and we'll follow up on that for you. I'll check it myself and see what if I can figure it out, and then if not, we can pass.
Shelley, Joaquin, videos that I had tried to watch last week, or that I had watched last week, I could not watch last night. It just came up a blank white screen. So there might be something going on with the website that was okay last week that didn't work last night.
Okay.
So it wasn't that particular video. I was looking for something to show to a project leader workshop, but I couldn't get videos to play last night on the website at all.
Thanks, Debbie. So maybe it's just kind of a short-term thing. So we'll check it out. Excellent question. All right, anybody else?
Shelley, this is Kathy Aiken. I have a comment on how to train drop-off team leads. We have a standing meeting, a logistics workshop that's scheduled for the last weekend in June. And I'm grateful I have that this year, because I could have up to 4 drop-off team leads that, this meeting is already set. I'll have my senior team members there, those who can make it. It's not a mandatory meeting. And I'm hoping to have a roundtable where best practices can be spoken about, and we can mentor some of these brand new folks who, I don't want to have to do it 4 times. And so if they can come to this meeting, I can do it once and then have the rest of the team come alongside it.
So Kathy, would you mind if I give you a call later and maybe with Teresa, my logistics coordinator, so that we can talk through what that meeting looks like?
Sure, no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I can even send you the agenda from last year.
Well, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, one thing I'll say about training the drop-off team leaders too, just a quick aside, is that that is an awesome way to recruit and invest more people in the ministry, because if you ask them to bring the people at their church that are going to be serving with them, then you have an even wider audience. And so I think that's always a good practice to not just train the drop-off team leader, but encourage them to bring extra people so that you have a little bit more of an audience. All right, anything else? Any other questions, comments?
If nobody has anything, one last question on this DOTL.
Yeah.
So the agenda you're going to send me assumes that the new member is going to read the guide in its entirety, which is like 50 odd pages, and then the agenda then is a set of exercises or meetings to try to emphasize or discuss certain of the key points from the guide.
That is exactly right. Yes. So we ask them to read through the manual and make note of, like, highlight things or make note of questions. And then, yes, then we take that agenda and it's just kind of pulling out some of the highlights that we definitely want to make sure that they got. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll just say a quick prayer and we can hit the road. So, Lord, thank you for this time. Bless our efforts, Lord. I pray that you would encourage everyone here, Lord, in your strength and your wisdom and your power, Lord, that you are going before us, as Kathy said, that you are coming behind us, and that, Lord, you are the God of angel armies, and that we have nothing to fear and everything to hope for. So we just pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.